highly watching, I'm mesmerized by these eyes. I'm so highly watching, I'm mesmerized by these eyes. I'm so highly watching, I'm mesmerized by these eyes. I'm so highly watching, I'm mesmerized by these eyes. I'm so highly watching, I'm mesmerized by these eyes. I'm so highly. walking by, mesmerized by these lines. I'm so high, they walking by, mesmerized by these lines. I'm so high, they walking by, mesmerized by these lines. I'm so high, they walking by, mesmerized by these lines. I'm so high, they walking by, mesmerized. I'm so high, they
Heyo, how's everybody doing? I'm alright, kind of, not really. So like, had my setup like perfect, just the way I wanted it. But for some reason, things have just decided to go to shit tonight. But you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. And we can do what we can do. And that's fine. However, come on. So I got a new USB dock for my Leppy so that I'd have more, places to plug things. And it was fun. And then I get this message and says, oh, you don't have enough space to run this stuff you need to run. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just unplug some things, move some things around, and now the mic don't work, the camera don't work, and OBS don't want to fucking start. And that's fine. That's okay. Didn't really want to play games tonight anyway, or whatever, What's good, Calvino Drifto? So this is a perfect segue into just my normal spiel about how I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor in my residing state, how I am also I'm a level 6 doctorate holder in rehab counseling and administration, and how much I absolutely love breaking down all the scientific pieces and bullcrap parts of the counseling process to help other people. So that being said, what I really like to do is talk about particular topics that really stand out to me as things that walk in my office very often, or just, things I see every day. And one of those things is trauma. Now, first, let's define trauma, shall we? Trauma, basically, actually, let's take with it, because we ain't switching shit right now. So, trauma, basically, can be defined in layman terms as anything that is so devastating, either mentally, physically, or emotionally, that it leaves a lasting ripple effect impact on your day-to-day function. So that could be, and that's the thing about trauma, is you can't define it for someone else and someone else can't define it for you, because we don't know what's going to severely impact you. Like a middle school age kid who's got her first boyfriend and he's rude to her and he breaks up with her and hurt their feelings, that's pretty fucking traumatic for her. Whereas we grown-ups would just be like, you will get over it, oh my god. But those are the type of ripple effects and impacts that create how we start to interact with people moving forward, how we present ourselves, and just kind of exist in a space in general, and so on and so forth. And so a big common misconception about trauma is that it's, got to be this grandiose, huge, life-changing thing that's noticeable by everyone. And it's really not. It's really not at all. So one thing that always stands out to me about whether it's couples counseling or running into a narcissist or someone who's just so highly toxic that it's crazy is, or someone that's running around undiagnosed, that one's always my favorite too, is the use of the word monster. Whether they're attributing it to themselves, whether they're attributing it to someone else, or someone they're just projecting stuff onto. Oh my goodness, my laptop is not even restarting fast enough. Oh golly goodness, I guess I should call my grandson that does the computers. But no, the use of the word monster has always stood out to me as something very indicative of a deeper level trauma that has blown up into this grandiose, expectation or requirement or characteristic of someone. So, case in point, I'm working, this a couple of years ago, worked with a couple, and, obviously communication wasn't there, whatever, and like one half of the couple just kept going in about what the other person wasn't doing, and what they were doing was harmful, and how they're toxic, and how this and that. All the while, no accountability on their side at all. They didn't do anything to deserve this, or start anything, or fan a fire, or anything. That's something different. But they would describe their partner as, "You're a monster." And I'm just like, wow. Because trauma does in fact create monsters. So let's break down what that means, shall we? Trauma does create monsters, because trauma can take someone who is completely emotionally available, kind-hearted, vulnerable and easily trusting, and crush all that, right? Crush it right round and turn it into this very solid rock thing, right? When you think of a monster, you think of something big, something ferocious, something that, attacks instead of necessarily defending itself. However, monsters may in fact be defending themselves, because they have learned that this is how they need to exist in the world to survive. Oh, stay with me and I'm going to bless you. So if I've gone from being developmentally and emotionally mature and caring and all that to someone bludgeoning the crap out of me, I'm going to be emotionally unavailable. I'm not going to have the proper communication skills anymore, because apparently I've been left wide open and this is what happened. So no, we're no longer going to be wide open, which definitely puts a damper on future relationships, puts a damper on getting to know people, puts a damper on getting close to people, all those things that people can deem as a toxic trait. You don't open up, you don't talk to me, you shut me out, when in actuality they have to do that to survive. So whatever has happened to them has had this giant ripple effect that has taught them, I need to be this way in my existence to be okay. Not content, not happy, not sad, okay. Status quo across the board. Because if I am not knocked in too many directions, I am certain and predictable and I feel okay. So, that being said, trauma does in fact make monsters. Now, the problem I have with people calling other people monsters, especially when they don't take accountability for their own stuff and they are too busy labeling to listen and or understand, is all of the things I just said. Right? I get it, you can be emotionally upset by not getting something you want from another person, or by not getting a need met in a relationship with someone whom you deem close. But there are more monstrous things out there than just being emotionally unavailable, feeling disconnected, disassociating, all of that stuff. Like slashing people's tires, that's monstrous. Punching people in the face because they disagree with you, that's monstrous. Riding by your grandma's house and shooting it up, that's monstrous, right? That's all that is types of monstrous. So to deem something that is, one, manageable and correctable with the right amount of therapy and the right amount of behavioral work, and two, doesn't really motivate the person to change, to seek help. Instead, it just kind of bludgeons them down some more and proves those rules right, that I can't open up because the world is a dangerous place. And three, you're completely defeating your purpose by labeling this person, right? It's just like, you're not there when I need you, you're not this, you're not that, you're a monster, and blah, blah, blah. But if you yourself have said you want to be close to this person, then why are you attacking this person? And last I checked, when we call someone a monster, that means they attack us. So trauma does in fact create monsters. Trauma has a way of taking something that may seem minuscule to you. It could be, an off-putting or offensive statement that a parent said to you when you were 6, that just has sat there and has festered and has grown into a self-confidence issue, a paranoia issue, a vulnerability issue. Or it could very well be you are an experienced driver and have been driving trucks all your life across country, back roads, all of that, and all of a sudden some weird whacked out thing happens where you end up unconscious and wake up in the hospital because your truck's been hit by something, right? And getting back behind the wheel can now be daunting because it's just like this thing, even though I've been so confident about my entire life, has been taken. And I've been shown that it's not impenetrable. I am mortal. I can have all the confidence I want, but if someone stabs me in the gut, I'm going to die, you know? So trauma creates monsters because it puts us in survival mode. It puts us so close to questioning and thinking about our own mortality that we begin to fear and we begin to grab every resource except the ones that make us open up to ball up and defend and protect. And those can be, you know, mental, emotional, those can be behavioral. So those can be, you know, I am terrified of my sexual assault trauma, so I will embrace promiscuity because at least then I have some control, even if I don't enjoy it. It could very well be, you know, I don't talk much, I listen a whole lot in my friendships because the last time I was left open like that, I was ridiculed and embarrassed. Even though I know these people care about me. That's just a risk that even though I love them, I'm not willing to put them in the position to do that to me. It could very well be simple as a kid, you know, being at school and not taking academic work so seriously anymore because something happened. Someone either said something, someone either, you know, offended them or embarrassed them about their academic work ethic, something the teacher said wrong to them. And it's just like, well, let me turn into being the class clown real quick because that's some positive reinforcement because this academic stuff is clearly not for me. I'm not being encouraged. I'm being torn down. And let's just learn how to do this instead. So trauma does, in fact, create monsters. I used to be a monster before I started seeking my own therapeutic help. Um, yeah, I used to be a really bad monster. Like, it was awful. So my first marriage was terrible. There's no communication. There was no nothing. There was just, oh, we vibe. This is great. We've been together for 2 years. Sure, why not? Let's get married. Oh, look at there. My mic is alive again. Apparently, I had to restart my laptop. Um, there was none of that, right? And so there would be frequent miscommunications. There would be frequent arguments, which, you know, in turn build up that trauma response. I've never been in this position of one, being married and in a committed relationship, and two, being argued with nor yelled at, right? And so you can physically tell I scrunch down when things happen. I used to, you know, not defend myself. I would just get really quiet and just wait for it to stop. And so that carried that over, you know, post-husband. I call him the husband. He was my husband. Post-husband era, for me, that carried over into, you know, I don't want to fight with you, even if I'm right. I don't want to speak up because I don't want to cause an argument. I don't want to be too attached because you, if I let you in too far, you can hurt me. So that, to my partners at the time, seemed very emotionally closed off, not warm, not vulnerable, not cuddle-tastic, none of that. Simply because I had learned that that's not safe. It's not safe to do. There was no amount of nurturing in the world that could tell me otherwise. Well, obviously until I met my current partner, but that made me into a horrible monster. I've made people cry. I've looked them straight in the face and was like, okay, like that's bad. That's granted, that's pretty heartless, but I wouldn't necessarily say monstrous per se, but for the sake of argument. But yeah, that's pretty monstrous, right? Tearing people down just because, you know, it's a natural reaction that you've learned how to do. And so through a lot of therapeutic work, a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, some reality therapy, and narrative therapy, I have become able to, you know, not only reaffirm myself and my self-confidence because, you know, pre-husband, life was kind of a mess. Upbringing was a little iffy, especially around the school area. But all of that therapeutic work allowed me to, one, give my self-confidence a voice. That, because that's something that gets taken with different traumas. A lot of people don't really notice that, especially if it's sexual assault, if it's, you know, an accident, life or death accident, if it's, you know, just this innate fear. Like, I know people walking around right now, this pandemic terrifies them, vaccine or not, because once again, it brings them very close to their mortality. They may have been shut up in the house since last March. They may have not come in contact with people in a year, but that fear is still there. because it makes them contemplate their own mortality. And that is a scary thought for people. That is a traumatic thought for people. So oftentimes they'll ruminate more often and not speak. Oftentimes, you know, their paranoia gets to the best of them so bad that if I say this out loud, it might very well happen, and I can't do that. So again, closed up, balled up, trying to defend from the outside world. That's people, places, things, whatever. And so building up that voice, that self-confidence voice, feeling grounded in your own body, because that is a trauma response a lot of people don't really think about either, is the disassociation part. Like the best way I could describe it is looking in the mirror at yourself and you can lock eyes with yourself and not connect at all. How do you deal with trauma when you have limited access to help? That is a great question. Hi, Ron. That is a great question. It depends on how you define limited access. Because sometimes we can get in our own way because, again, that's our trauma blocking us in and blocking other things out. So it depends on how you're defining limited access, whether it's, you know, is it a financial limitation? Is it, you know, a physical limitation? Is it just, you know, I'm too afraid to open this box limitation, so on and so forth. Because in the grand old age of 2021, we live in an era where teletherapy is a thing, where subscription services to counselors is a thing. So, you know, if it's a physical limitation, understandable. If it's a physical limitation, understandable, you know, try to go to telehealth route. Actually, with telehealth, I find it's more hands-on, so that you're actually choosing the therapist you want to see instead of just kind of being assigned and going with whoever. And it's also convenient because it's on your time. You don't have to drive anywhere. You know, it's just kind of about you in that moment with them. If limited access means financial stuff, there are plenty of places that do sliding fee scale. A lot of people don't really know about that. Sliding fee scale is more so about, you know, hey, let me look at your income, let me look at how you spend it. All right, $5 a session. Can you do that? If not, we'll look at some voucher programs. So like, instead of, you know, going to uppity name brand agencies and whatnot, you know, really look for community agencies. You probably look like dingy old rundown buildings, but I assure you the counselors in there are probably high quality, because the work we do, no one gets in the counseling business to make money, unfortunately. Hence, I went ahead and got a PhD, Dr. Money. No one gets into counseling because they want to make money. They get into counseling because they want to help people, period. And so it doesn't matter what the agency itself looks like. That person took the time, went to school, got the license, maintained the license, continues to maintain the license, and grow their education to be able to serve people. So if it's not shiny and pretty on the outside, that's not the point. The point is to help you be shiny and pretty in the inside. And so finding a therapist that can help you with that is more important. Access meaning just kind of our own blockage of, ooh, I don't know if I want to open this box. That's something that needs to be processed in your first session ever, or something that just kind of needs to be addressed in your own self-reflection stuff. Because the problem with that is we are allowing our trauma to limit ourselves. And usually it takes one great big push of oomph to get us past that, right? To get us to the point where we're like, I cannot live like this, or I can, I kind of just don't want to, you know, and making and weighing the pros and cons of, you know, is this worth it to me, and what is it worth to me? Which, you know, kind of negates every other piece, the financial piece, the physical piece, the fear piece, you know. What does getting back to feeling like me mean to me? Because I'll tell you something, people will move mountains for the right cause, number one. And number two, if we are feeling like we are being held back by other people, let me tell you something. Other people will find a way to get their own needs met. If they are dependent upon you to take care of your grandpa, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and they are two functioning, capable, grown-ass adults, and this is their father, you need to put them in a position where, listen, this is on y'all for right now. Let me take 2 days. I have an appointment. Let me take this time. Because what's the point of having all this responsibility pushed on you if you can't, if you're deteriorating, right? Like, we got to refill our cup at some point. So looking at how we define limited access is a good place to start. Also, shameless plug, betterhelp.com. I swear by it. It's amazing. And yes, I work for them. But I like the way they set up. I like it better than Talkspace, but Talkspace is more affordable. There's also Cerebro. That one's pretty new, but they also do med management too, which is cool. And I think they're also super affordable too. So Ron says, when you deal with people who only want to be around people who tell them what they want to hear, and they accuse you of being wrong for trying to make them see the light, what is that? That is projection and a lack of empathy and accountability, which we just kind of touched on. A person with epilepsy probably could not handle my background right now, but whatever. But yeah, that's a lack of accountability and all that good stuff, simply because they are yet to be in the space where they're like, oh, let me, see both sides of this without judgment. Let me be empathetic because I want them to be empathetic to me, right? But that's not happening. And also with that comes, oh wait, where's that plug at? Also with that comes, accountability piece. It's like, it's one thing to have an opinion. It's one thing to have a side of something, but it's another thing to acknowledge that side and to acknowledge that role. Simply because, these things don't happen by themselves. You ever hear the phrase, it takes two to tango? There's a reason for that. So yeah, accountability and just empathy in general. What else? Hey, Boy Wonder, what's good? Think that mental health really is in question today because people who believe in election conspiracies has gone wild and it's changed society. To be fair, those people have always existed. Like, always existed. They've just been kind of given a platform and a reason at this point. So, conspiracy theorists, while I find them interesting, and it's always great to have them sit in my chair, you have to kind of come at it from meeting them where they're at. Once again, there is a reason they've gotten up to this point and believe what they believe. Could be trauma. It could be just general upbringing, because a lot of people don't seem to understand that people literally school their kids on their beliefs and expect them to follow suit. And the punishments are severe. Whether that's physical, whether that's mental, and that sounds like traumatic scarring. Sounds like they're making people into monsters in that house, right? So, good question. Good question. Potential for violence has never been as high as it is now. Yes and no. It's been just as high, I think, but just scattered instead of just very organized in one place. Yay, 90 stellar moon. That's what's up. But yeah, so trauma does in fact make monsters. Where's that plug at? There it is. And where is my PlayStation? I've been telling y'all that my PlayStation and my Sega only likes to work when it's laying in my lap like some kind of pet, right? Don't make no sense. I'm like, bruh, just play the game. Play the game, spend some time. So, but yeah, so trauma does make monsters. Trauma responses are often not something we are used to, simply because we see it as just kind of everyday. This is how we act, right? We see it as this is just kind of the thing that we do. This isn't trauma. This is how I respond to things. So, good point, good valid point. Especially, kind of for me, going back to that upbringing piece, is how people naturally adapt to their trauma. So, naturally adapting can look like taking care of someone else. Naturally adapting can look like being a straight A student, right? But the problem with that is that while it's adaptable and super effective for one thing, because if there's, emotional tension in my household and the best way I can handle it and navigate it is to be a straight A student, is to be a straight A student and keep people off my back and keep people happy with me, then I'm going to continue to do that. Problem is all that added pressure. The other problem is, all that responsibility that I've kind of created for myself, right? And so that's why when these people, go to higher ed or they get to a point where they're out of school, they feel like they don't have a purpose. Doesn't it? Ooh, mic sounds. La 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 la. Smoosh. But yeah, so they really, kind of lose their purpose with that. And that's a problem. Simply because now they've built their whole world around this survival response, and it just hasn't happened for them. I haven't played this game in forever, y'all. Another way that trauma shows up outside of relationships is the need to people please, or the need to enable or just kind of feel needed. Codependency is also one way. Get it, Tanya. So the need to feel needed, the codependency thing. So that's why a lot of failed relationships with trauma people happen, is because, they're trying to fit a persona, even though they don't know if they can even do that. When it comes to things like people pleasing, right? Even if it's, I'm putting myself way the hell out of here for no reason, like, I know in my heart I should say no to this person, but I'm going to say yes so that, they're never upset with me. That's a trauma response. That's a classic walking around on eggshells in my own home. Ah, you bitch. That's a classic I'm tiptoeing around on eggshells kind of response that, may have been learned in childhood, may have been learned in a, domestic violence situation, whether in adulthood or childhood. That's a trauma response. Another trauma response is, just kind of having poor boundaries. Again, that can go along with people pleasing. Poor boundaries. The need to take care of others, once again, especially if you're putting yourself out, you're spending your last dime on somebody else. Like, my favorite things to watch are Intervention, Hoarders, and what's the other one? My 600-Pound Life. Because I find it interesting on My 600-Pound Life, not the people or their size, but their partners. Not necessarily the fact that they do have partners, but the fact that these partners are so dependent on them to be needed that they stick around. Because you'll notice there may not be much affection, there may not be, any genuine reciprocal support for each other, but because they need them to, no offense, because some of the shows are, they need them to, hose them off on the porch, they need them to be able to roll over and get places, they have to feel needed, and so that feeds that. They have to be useful, because they've learned that being useful means that they are safe and they're not expendable. Kind of worried about how I would be after your grandpa's. Very true. And I would very much encourage you to see someone, once that happens. Or even, start now as in building up to that happens. Because grief and loss is also a trauma. It's also trauma ground. And we wouldn't want you to go around being a monster, right? So definitely get some help with that, see how you feel about it for real, because no one wants to have regrets when people are, on the brink of passing or anything like that. And also really, no one wants to resent having all this free time once, it does happen. No one wants to resent being able to move on with their lives, because then that feels like, well, I did this, I didn't take care of him enough, or, things like that. When I ask the questions I do, could that trigger someone? I've had some interesting reactions to questions that have been blocked by people due to the subjects. No, Ron, when you ask questions to us on our streams, it doesn't really trigger people, because that's a good reason why we have the mature rating on our Twitch streams, because we talk about some rude shit, we talk about some real shit, and sometimes it gets a little gross. Obviously not to violate Twitch TOS, but I don't believe so. I think your questions are very intriguing because they cause people to go to parts of their brain that they just really, I'm never going to get used to this boomerang. He's about to kick my ass again. But yeah, it makes them access parts of their brain that they probably normally wouldn't. Now, if they're visual people like I am, they may be a little triggered. because like envisioning things, my brain just kind of goes to work. I don't really have a choice in that. So that's a thing. Also heard, let's see, people in my 6-pound life are enabled to the point where it gets dangerous, right? Yes, it does get dangerous, because if they don't see a problem with, you know, their eating or, you know, taking their recommendations from their doctor seriously, then they are enabling. And the thing about, you know, the reason I like those shows, Intervention, Hoarders, and My 600-Pound Life, is because trauma is always underneath. Like Hoarders especially, like, oh my gosh, you're trying to fill your life with stuff, and that's amazing. Like, that this is how you decided to cope. Mates leaving them once they lose weight, is that because they want someone that is totally independent? Sometimes, yes. That goes back to that codependent thing I was talking about before. Because traumatically, I become the monster that makes people need me, right? In order to feel okay and exist. And so when they do lose the weight, it's just like, oh, you can do for yourself, and I'm pretty useless. You're going to see that, you know, I'm not good enough to keep around, so I'm just going to go. Right? Ron's questions are the best. Because, like, where else am I going to have to choose between, you know, organic life forms crawling in my mouth or ears and physical pain? Where am I going to do that? Nowhere. That's right, Tanya. Get them. So, any questions about trauma in general? Any questions about trauma responses, resource recommendations, anything like that? Do I feel unbalanced if I can't wear a certain set of headphones? Yes, definitely. So like my cat ear headphones, I usually only wear these to the airport, but because they go so well with my laptop and they sound so better, and they're hella noise canceling, I love them. And also because they're colorful, like me. And my new mic. Oh, you about to kick my ass. Bastard. But yeah, I do feel unbalanced. But like if I'm at work and I've got my AirPods in, I do need some form of just sound in them. Like if I don't have my AirPods at work, I am destroyed. Because I really decide to lose myself in music. And if I can't do that, I can't focus really. Same thing about wearing shoes and socks. Is the need to vape due to trauma? It's possible, because again, we can't define someone else's trauma for them. You gonna stop throwing these shits. But if bastard. So if you have, let's see, what could be a possible trauma related thing? Something it could be something that's not due to vaping specifically. It could just be an oral fixation. Like for me, when I get stressed or sleepy or I'm hyper focused, I play with my ear. Like I've done it ever since I was 2. It's just one of those responses that is very self-soothing, especially in, stop throwing rocks, bastard. It's just self-soothing, especially in times of high stress or feeling overwhelmed, hence trauma responses. That's why some children, you know, tend to bedwet more often. That's why some children, you know, suck their thumb for longer. Some children have a special security item. He whipped my ass really quick that time. So it could very well be due to trauma. Yeah. How can you decode your trauma responses? Taking an internal self-reflection. So looking at just kind of experiences from the past and comparing them to the present is one way that can be really helpful. Another way is, you know, really thinking about relationships, how you act, how you know, figure those out. Paying more conscious attention to just kind of daily behaviors is another good way. Simply because, you know, we don't necessarily know what we're doing day to day because these trauma responses are so unconscious. So taking a mental conscious inventory is a good way. Rico, you don't beat my ass again. That's all right. I'm gonna remember how to play this game one day. So just kind of paying more conscious attention. So for instance, noticing how you are when you get bad news, noticing how you are when you get good news, like a compliment. That's usually a really good way to see what your trauma response is. Because again, it attacks things like, oh, no more continues. This is gonna be nasty. But like usually that's a really big one, big indicator on how we responded to trauma and how we've just kind of incorporated it into our daily being. Is like, can you take a compliment? Like, what do you do? What do you notice? What do you feel? A few years ago, if someone were to compliment me, I'd just be like, okay. It made me awkward. It made me uncomfortable. It made my anxiety go up. And I'm like, why am I like this? Oh my God. And part of it is a trauma response, right? It's just like, I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing to stay out of the way and stay helpful and needed, but still out of the way. And if I step out of line, whether that's bad or good, hence compliments, then that's drawing attention to me that I'm trying not to have. So just paying more attention to how you react to certain things, how you react to stress and under pressure. Like if you fixing on a car and, you know, this lug nut just won't come off and you done asked it and then told it twice and it still won't come off. How do we respond to stress? How do we respond to challenge? Do we get angry? Is that more of a defensive stance? Do we get quiet? Do we get clever? Do we, you know, retreat into ourselves to really think about it and fixate until we figure it out? So, were they rating? Were they? So just really starting to notice normal day-to-day behavior is a good way to decode your trauma responses. Things like BDSM were seen by those practicing mental health as crazy, and now that position has changed. Do you think that changed because the ones who were providing mental health started doing it and didn't want it to seem strange to clients? Absolutely not. And I will tell you why. Well, that's part of it. Because one, I mean, BDSM is for everybody. And it doesn't matter what you went to school for. Two, the other thing about it is how our diagnoses strategies have changed. So we have gone through four original diagnosing manuals. We are now on our fifth one. This one is the most progressive of all because one, we stopped diagnosing, gay people as having a disease. And, body dysmorphia is real and addiction has an actual spelled out set of qualifiers. So BDSM is still in the DSM-5. However, the thing about it is there are specific criteria. So if it's just regular, I'm into BDSM, I'm a submissive, I go to play parties often, I've been collared 6 times, this, that, and the other, but I still have a job, I have functional relationships that are close, I have a means to, use it as an outlet instead of just this is just how I am, the end. Like if I have integrated it and I'm confident about it and I am not harmed by it, then it's not diagnosable. So that was a good question, Ron. Good question. Yeah. So close relationships, meaningful relationships, functional, as long as you're a functional human being, ain't nothing wrong with you. Difference between a fixation and an addiction. Addiction usually has a behavior attached to it, right? Addiction is just this blind fulfilling a need to please that reward center in your brain. Whereas a fixation can be voluntary or involuntary. Addiction, depending on what model you go with. If you're with the disease model, clearly it's involuntary. If you're, with other things, it's a whole different discussion. It's still up for debate. It's terrible. But fixations are mostly thought-based. So addiction is behavioral. And fixation is thought-based. So that's like ruminating on things. That's like, really, really just honing in on small details that may or may not even matter. Clearly. So fixating is different. I know you can. No, we not doing that. Oh, my controller went to sleep. Wake up. But yeah, so good questions. What's interesting about how trauma is diagnosed is that there are several qualifiers, which I think is kind of illegit, but it works still. Let's get to practice because we keep getting our ass kicked. Because again, I haven't played this game in a while. Ooh, let's go to the ice pit. But yeah, how it's diagnosed is a lot different. So it's got a bunch of qualifiers: severity, duration, and just symptoms. So for some people, symptoms can be, high anxiety. Symptoms can be insomnia, hypersomnia, like we talked about last week. Things can be just kind of a decrease in pleasure or enjoyment in life, stuff like that. Symptoms can also be, having various flashbacks, having flashbacks, having nightmares, night terrors, things like that. What other symptoms? See, now we figured out how to throw that thing. Isn't that awesome? So that's pretty much it for symptoms. So exaggerated responses, like startle responses, can also be a symptom. While a need to people please is a very observable thing in therapy, it's unfortunately not diagnosable. Unfortunately. As far as duration goes, for some diagnoses, it depends on what kind of trauma. Again, it categorizes trauma. So for like PTSD, duration is 6 months or more of some of those symptoms. For acute trauma disorder, it's 6 months or less. So how, you react, whether you react right away or you react long term, becomes a thing. Severity, whether it impacts daily functioning. Can you go to work? Can you go to school? Can you grocery shop by yourself? Stuff like that. But yeah, there are a couple of different disorders that are trauma related. They actually gave it a trauma related section in the new diagnosis manual. So that's a thing. But it all depends. Like, it's kind of got gray areas, just like grief does. So grief can either be diagnosed as uncomplicated bereavement or bereavement otherwise specified. And that sucks because everybody's grief process is different, and everybody, takes different times to grieve and to finish grieving. So it's hard to, put words on it, but as professionals, we have to be able to diagnose and blah, 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 and yada, yada. Good questions. So we got about 8 minutes left, and I figured out how to do a fireball, but not pick my weapon back up. We've figured out how to switch sides, kinda. That's down, that's over. What does this do? Oh, you can kick with the sticks? That's weird. So, going back to last Monday, you know how I said I wanted to talk about balls and sleep? So I was gonna play Tekken 3, I was gonna play Tekken Ball. I love that move. I was gonna play Tekken 3. How do you do it again? Damn it! I was gonna play Tekken 3 and play Tekken Ball, but as I mentioned, my mother had pilfered my copy, the family's copy of Tekken 3, and it is in her storage unit currently, and we know not where it is. So I went on the lovely internets. It's not working for you? Alright, we gonna troubleshoot this right after I get off of here. You and me, we gonna figure it out. So I went on the lovely interwebs, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just buy another copy. It's not the first time my mother has thwarted my efforts at nostalgic gaming, and I've had to rebuy my entire collection, because that's what parents do. They throw things out. But mine apparently steals things. So I went on the interwebs, and I was like, fuck it, let's buy a copy of Tekken 3. Can't be more than $10, $20, whatever. Bruh. Why this shit on Amazon for $119? $119, y'all. Like, why though? Like, I understand it's an OG good game because that's when they started, putting in cute little arcade games and shit. But why though? God damn. So I said, fuck Amazon. And then I went on eBay and found a nice mint condition copy, because apparently people just like to buy things that sit on them, for $17. So it will be here on Wednesday. And so that's what we're playing next Monday. So what do y'all think we should talk about next Monday? Because I got the Trauma Monsters idea from a close friend, because the word monster just stands out to me so much, and it just screams you're undiagnosed and you're trying to project on other people to me. So what should we talk about? We could talk about like relationship shit. We could talk about family dynamic shit. We could talk about, I love talking about medication. We could talk about medication experiences.
I can see if I can rustle up a guest to kind of talk about their experience with mental health and dissect them a little bit. I mean, we're not gonna Dr. Phil them, but like, you know, just give a different perspective other than mine. Let's see. What else? What else could we talk about? We could talk about different types of therapy. So cognitive therapy, narrative therapy, behavioral therapy, humanistic psychology, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, person-centered counseling, anything like that. Yeah, we could talk about attachment theory. We definitely could talk about that. And we can also tie in like love languages and shit too, if you like. I like how like I can make that fireball happen just by button mashing, and then the things that I do don't even help. Like the buttons register at the bottom, and it's not even helpful for me. But yeah, so I will probably put a poll up on my social media. I'll toss out attachment theory. I'll toss out. That was cool. How the fuck do you do that? Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. There it is. Got it. Anyway, I'm gonna spam the crap out of this when I get off here. But yeah, I'll put a poll up. You're interested in all the above? All right. Well, I'll pull a poll up with all those things I just said, so we'll see what we just talk about next week. What sounds most interesting for the next week? How about that? And so I'll probably put it on like my Twitter, my Facebook. I'll probably put it in the Discord somewhere too. So yeah, so that's a thing. So I appreciate y'all for coming to hang out. I don't know if John is on yet, but feel free to take a look at the original Blue Skirt Boy. I have given up on trying to raid because I have no idea if I've done it right or not. That's another one of my trauma responses, right? It's being too in control and trying to figure out why doesn't this work. So with that being said, Calvino Drifto, we're gonna work on your Discord problem, and I will see all of y'all tomorrow. Bye.